Hey everyone! Today we'll build a simple blog using SurrealDB and Vue.js in under 20 minutes. Our first step is to install SurrealDB. Here, I'm using Linux. Now let's start it up, adding two parameters, the address and port we want to use, and allow guests to let unauthenticated users read posts. To handle our queries, we'll use the official SurrealDB client called Surrealist. You can either download it or run it directly from your browser. Now, let's create a connection by simply adding the URL, along with the root username and password. Next, we'll create our namespace and database, which we'll call blog. This is where we'll store our tables and data. Now, let's test that everything is set up correctly by using info for DB. Here, we define the roles table with the schema full option, meaning we have a strict schema. We grant full select permissions, but restrict create, update, and delete permissions. We then add a name field of type string to the roles table to store the role name, and we create two roles, admin and user, each with a specific name. In the users table, we grant full select permissions for anyone. We restrict create to only users who have the admin role. And update and delete permissions are allowed only for the user themselves or users with the admin role. Now we add a username, email, password, and roles field to the users table. To ensure uniqueness, we define indexes on the email and username fields, which will prevent duplicate values in these columns. Next, we'll define authentication methods using define access. This allows you to tell SurrealDB what the registration and logging methods should be like. The sign-in and sign-up methods after obtaining the user will automatically return a JSON web token. Then, we must specify the token and session expiration time. Here is a comparison of what traditional authentication is like compared to how SurrealDB does it. Finally, let's define the post table. The post table allows full select access for published posts, or posts where the user is the author, or the user has admin privileges. Only the post's author or an admin can create, update, or delete posts. We define fields for the title, description, and content of the post, along with published default false, created _@, and updated _@ timestamps. Finally, we add a user field referencing the author, defaulting to the authenticated user's ID. Now we will create a Vue.js project with TypeScript, Pinia, and Vue Router. Now we will install the official SurrealDB SDK for JavaScript and TypeScript. With this, we will be able to connect to the database. To style our frontend, we will use Tailwind CSS, so we install it as shown in the official guide. Now we will initialize SurrealDB in Vue.js. To do this, we first create a .env file and add the database address. Then we create a folder called API, and inside a file called connect.ts, where we will create the global instance of SurrealDB and initialize it. Finally, in the main.ts file, we will create a function called bootstrap, who will be responsible for calling the initDB function before the main Vue.js component is mounted. Now we will create the necessary functions to be able to authenticate with SurrealDB, where we will have to pass the corresponding values to our previously defined access. And we will also create a function to check if our token is still valid. Now we define the user data type and a function to obtain our user. SurrealDB provides a method to obtain the authenticated user and access. Finally, we will create the post data type. To manage SurrealDB IDs in TypeScript, it provides us with a class called recordID. Then we will create the CRUD for our post table. The SDK provides us with methods to select, update, delete, and create records in the table that we specify. For the functions where we must create, update, or delete, we will add an authentication check. Now we will eliminate the code that comes by default when creating a Vue.js project, and we will do a hello world to see that everything is in order. And now we start the development server. Now we will create a store where we save our token that SurrealDB will give us when we authenticate. We will also configure the store to read and save the token from local storage. Now we will create a simple navbar in app.vue for our layout, where we will add a title and a link to home and another to login. We create a file called loginpage.vue. Here we will create a simple form with two input fields, one for the email and another for the password, and then a button that when clicked executes a function. In the input fields, we will put its respective reference in the V model. In the handle login function, we will execute the login function, and if the promise returns the token, we will save it in the store and redirect the user to home. Now we will test that everything works correctly. Apparently, we missed adding the login page to the list of routes, so we added it. Now we create a user from SurrealList. Perfect, we have obtained a token correctly. Now we will add a function to be able to log out and also a button to go see the post in the navbar. Additionally, we will check before the application is mounted if there is a token coming from the local storage. If there is one, we will authenticate with SurrealDB. If the token has expired or is invalid, it will be removed from the local storage. Now we will make the page to create a post. For this, we will make a form similar to the one on the login page. Now in the script, we import the previously defined function to create posts, and we will use a reactive for the post. Now we execute the function where we pass our token and the reactive with the post data. We see the result that the promise gives us, and if the post was created correctly, we redirect the user to the post. For the update post page, it will be similar to the create post page, but we have to load the post data based on the ID and assign it to the reactive and use the previously defined function to update the post. Post data will contain the value of the post in its current state obtained using the getPost function. We have to convert the ID found in the URL into a SurrealDB ID using record ID imported from the SDK. Then we create a function to assign the value of post data to the reactive of post. We define the function handleUpdatePost, which will be similar to handleCreatePost. Finally, we load the post data using onBeforeMount. For the list of posts, we will make a grid and iterate over an array of posts. In turn, if they are not authenticated, we will not show the Create Post button. In the script, we will simply create a ref, which will be an array of posts. We create a function to load the post using the getPost function, and finally onBeforeMount, we execute that function. Now for the post page, we render the data and style it to our liking. And if you are not authenticated, we hide the Edit Post button. In the script, we must again convert the ID obtained from the URL into a SurrealDB ID using the record ID class. Finally, we define a function to load the post data and execute it in onBeforeMount. And finally, we add the newly created pages to the list of routes. And here the final result.
Tower beats on the track. Tower beats on the track.
That's it. We've built a simple blog that still has room for many more features and improvements. But the exciting part is that we managed to get a solid result in very little time. Thanks for watching, and I hope this inspires you to keep building and expanding.